Hi everyone, and welcome to the Jedi Knight of the Woods channel. Thanks very much for stopping by again for another video. What I wanted to do early on in the series was just give you an introduction to this book that I keep and refer to quite regularly. I do have the SAS Survival Handbook by Lofty Wiseman. Cracking little handbook. This is certainly not a pack-sized book, it's fairly large. This is something I'll keep at home and refer to on a regular basis. It's the SAS Encyclopedia of Suirvival. Now, so I'm not military trained. I'm not necessarily too interested in escape and evasion tactics and techniques. This book does include some of those, which is fine. Always, worth knowing, I guess. The author is Barry Davies, BEM. What this does is give you a very good grounding and a lot of detailed information on survival techniques in different environments. It starts off first of all with going to the index page there. Basic equipment, medical priorities, survival medicine, shelter, fire, water, food, navigation, travel and rescue. All of these key components that any sort of bushcrafter or wilderness living enthusiast will keep us in mind regularly. Now, the thing with this, it looks at each individual environment in its own right. Moving on to the next sort of contents page, you can see here that it breaks it down into a number of different sections. On this page, detailing the Arctic environment, so the polar regions, clothing and equipment, surviving forced landings, medical hazards, including frostbite, hypothermia, shelter, construction fires, food, plants, hunting and trapping, travel, climate and terrain to expect, and water, so distribution, location, that sort of thing. Going into the desert side of things, also moves shelter, food and travel there. Jungle environment, shelter, water, food and travel again. It also looks at the sea and coastline. So looking at floating and swimming, life rafts, medical emergencies, signalling, dangerous creatures, food and water, coastline and islands, looking at beaching, water, food, rescue again. And also at the back of the book it's a section on the military, so equipped, training and equipped, trained and hunted. Looking at psychological battle, short-term survival, so on and so forth. Gives you a good introduction to the book, the whys and wherefores. Also looks at basic survival equipment, which we're all sort of familiar with. Everybody's made an Altoids tin before, or tobacco tin survival kit. And I'm sure pretty much everyone that's involved in the outdoors, wilderness living, bushcraft, so on and so forth, will have one of these. So that gives you an idea on how to make one. It goes into fishing kits, navigation techniques, multi-tools, tools, knives, first aid, equipment. What it does have that I quite like are these little lifesaver tips, because human beings can digest small amounts of information at a time, and whether you're an extrovert or an introvert will depend on how you process that information. I quite like these little survival tips, these little lifesaver tips. They're very short, sharp pieces of information that are easy to understand and to take in. It's a wealth of information here. I mean, you wouldn't expect, well, might get a few individuals that will learn all of this. But for me, you, most people out there, we couldn't be expected to learn everything. So this is a great source of reference. It's got some fairly nasty wound treatment, medical priorities, breaking, dislocations, all those sorts of things, frostbite, how to treat, medicinal expectations out in the wilderness, plants, those sorts of things. And then it goes on to each of the survival essentials around shelter, fire making, everything you'd expect from a survival book really. Then goes on to each of the sections around water sources, edible plants, fungi, animal food, snares and traps, which is a great little section. Hunting weapons, how to make them, how to use them effectively, prey animals, preparing game, preparing insects, fishing. It's an absolutely fantastic book. It's a great number of photographs, which I really like, not just diagrams, drawn diagrams, into cooking, navigation, using different methods, so the stick method, using the stars, the sands, the tree growth, all those sorts of things. Moving on to travel, then search and rescue, signalling, and then going into each of the different regions. So the Arctic region, moving on to the desert region, all the things to expect there, the jungle region, and then at the back of the book looking at sea and coastline survival, different types of edible seaweeds, those sorts of things, and then a short bit on the military training. It does include some bits and bobs on lockpicking, which is illegal obviously, but you know, it's those sorts of techniques. You need to practice these lockpicking techniques for years and years and years and years to get proficient at them, so I'm not too worried about that. But it gives you a bit on the psychology of things as well. And there you have it. So an absolutely fantastic book. This was given to me as a gift for Christmas one year. It is quite expensive at £25, 25 English pounds, so it's going to be about 35 to 40 US dollars. But really, for a sort of book that you're going to keep for a very long time, I think more than worth it. Thanks very much for joining me for another video. Really appreciate you stopping by. Subscriptions would be great. Please rate the videos. Any positive and constructive criticism is always welcome. Anything negative will be ignored or deleted. Thanks guys, see you soon.